Do you wonder if you're the best version of yourself? This is the question we seek to answer in this podcast. We reveal information that helps you recover your health and become resilient. Modern life makes us fragile. Our diet, lifestyle, and environment set us up for failure. We do not accept this. We seek optimization. We strive to become dynamic. Hey, what's going on? Dr. Chris here. Today's episode, I want to talk about tendons. Tendinitis, tendinopathy, tendinosis, what those all mean, what caused them, and what to do about them. So let me start off by describing what tendons are. I get a lot of questions about this. What's a ligament? What's a tendon? A ligament is a passive structure. I think of it as a piece of duct tape holding two bones together. So it's a bone-to-bone attachment, and it's not meant to be stretched. Whereas a tendon deals with recoil and elasticity. It does stretch to some degree, not as much as the muscle itself, and it is the interface between the muscle and the bone. So the end of a muscle is the tendon, which then transitions to insert onto a bone. So all muscles have tendons, one at the origin and one at the insertion. When you look at the muscle itself, the belly of the muscle is red, so it means it has a lot of blood supply, whereas the ends get more white, that transitional zone. That means poor blood supply. That's the tendon. So if you eat a chicken wing and there's that little firm piece that attaches to the bone, that's the tendon. So what are tendons made of? Well, if you kind of picture a rope embedded in a gel, that's similar to the substance that a tendon is made out of. The fibrous, ropey, collagenous part is what gives it the strength, whereas that gel or that ground substance is what gives it flexibility, hydration, and shock absorption. That ground substance is made about 70 to 80% of water, and then something called the GAGs, or glycosaminoglycans. And then there's chondroitins in there, proteoglycans, glycoproteins, and then there's ions such as sodium, potassium, calcium, so in other words, electrolytes, and those are what help maintain the osmotic balance. You've probably heard of glucosamine and chondroitin as a supplement you can take for joints and cartilage and tendons, and there's some moderate research around that. The idea is, what is it made out of? It's got these things in it. Let's put that in, and maybe that helps rebuild a tendon. All right, so let's get into some of the terminology. So tendinopathy is just a general term that means a pathology of a tendon. So it doesn't really tell you much. It's sort of a junk term. A tendinitis is, so itis in Latin is inflammation, so it's inflammation of the tendon. That is more of the acute issue. So if someone just increased their miles running and their Achilles is starting to bother them, chances are that's a tendinitis. A tendinosis is more of a chronic condition. That's where you get fraying or disorganization of the fibers of the tendon. So tendinitis acute, tendinosis chronic. The difference there is your approach in rehabbing. It can be slightly different. Now, what causes this? So classically, it's described as overload. There's some other things too, such as aging. There's lack of collagen. The diet can do it. In fact, you lose about 1% of collagen per year. So by the time you're 40, you've lost about 40% of your collagen. There are certain antibiotics like the fluoroquinolones can cause it. NSAID use, chronic NSAID use can also lead to degeneration. Poor biomechanics can do this. So if you're like a runner again and you're an overpronator, this could lead to a difference in the way the Achilles is being strained. Maybe it's strained in one portion of the Achilles. And also diabetes can contribute to this as well. And there's also how you train. That matters too. So if you are more of a bodybuilder, you're going to tend to do things slow and controlled. Right? So that's going to sort of put more emphasis on the muscle belly and less on the tendon, right? Because that tendon deals with elastic load. And then the muscle starts to become stronger in comparison to the tendon. So bodybuilders tend to get tendon issues. On top of that, a lot of people train and they get sore the next day, and once they recover, they train again. Well, what they've done is allowed the muscle belly to recover. And remember that the tendon has poor blood supply, so it takes a little longer for the tendon to recover, so that's another reason this happens. Whereas if you took a different type of athlete, like a sprinter or someone who does a lot of plyometrics, they're going to be doing a lot of jumping and things and landing, where the tendons are absorbing shock and creating recoil. So what tends to happen there is the tendon becomes stronger, more durable than the muscle belly. So sort of speed athletes tend to have more muscle issues than tendon issues. Right? So what you do there is you do cross training. Right? So if you're a football player, you should also do some slow, concentric, eccentric movements. And conversely, if you're a bodybuilder, you should do some box jumps and things like that to load the tendon. So I'll go over some sort of key concepts in terms of rehabbing these issues. First off, you definitely want to stop doing the movement that is causing it in the first place temporarily. That's not to say if you do it during running doesn't mean you can't run ever again. It just means you need to let things cool off and rebuild. And then you also want to supply the tendon with its needs. So in this case, mostly it's water, electrolytes, and collagen. You could try some of those supplements that I mentioned. I think collagen goes much further just because it's such a common deficiency. So where do you get collagen? So I think bone broth is a great way to get it. So you can either make your own bone broth. There is a brand that I like called Bare Bones. That's a powder you can put into hot water and drink it like tea. I love it. I drink that every day. Or you can get a collagen supplement. Now, the collagen powders tend to be like poorly absorbed, usually about 15 to 30%. So if you're going to go the supplement route, I would highly recommend a liquid supplement. There's a medical grade one that I like. I'll put that in the show notes as well. That one I tend to get really good results with. Now, obviously, you need your protein, you need your amino acids, and you need your sleep. Sleep is where everything recovers. That is such a key component or missing component to so many people's training is they're sort of prioritizing working out over sleep. And I just think the bang for the buck is much more great for getting quality sleep over the extra workout that week. Remember, you train to recover. The recovery is where the magic happens. That's where the adaptation occurs. That's where you get bigger, stronger, faster. All right, now let's get into the rehab component. So I kind of see it on a spectrum. On one side, you've got tendonitis, and on the other side, you've got tendinosis. So you just have to meet the tissue where it is. So on the acute phase, tendonitis, you have to be a little more conservative, and that's where I'll usually start off with isometrics. So what is an isometric? It's when a muscle is under tension, but you don't see any movement. So picture a plank, right? Your core, your shoulders are all engaged, but they're not changing in length. So we'll stick with the Achilles reference or analogy. So if I was to take my foot and press down on a gas pedal, that's what the calf and Achilles do. Achilles is just the tendon of the calf or gastroc. So it's that plantar flexion movement. So if you put your foot against a wall and just pushed into the wall, and your tension, the calf is now generating tension along with Achilles, and if I'm watching you, I don't see any movement. Your foot's not moving. That's an isometric. And by the way, you got to do it for about a minute or so for 5 reps twice a day. That's my general recommendation, depending on the sensitivity of the tendon. All right, now, why isometrics? Because of something called stress shielding. So if you picture someone's Achilles, let's say the inside part, the medial part, is where the injury has occurred. When you do something like plantar flexion or heel raises, the stress, the line of tension will go around that injured part like a rock in a river. And you want to actually create tension in that injured part within reason. You don't want it to be super painful or anything like that. That when you create that line of tension, that stimulates healing in that area. That stimulates the blood flow and all the nutrients you need to rebuild that tendon. So if you hold for about a minute in an isometric, that area where the line of tension is sort of going around that injured part, that stress shielding, that will start to fatigue, and that will force a line of tension through the injured tissue. And there is a sort of analgesic or pain-killing quality to isometrics. People always tell me, oh, it feels better after I do that. Well, you've gotten some blood to the area. That's going to help. After doing that for a period of time and it's feeling easy to do and you're not having any pain, then you can progress to the next phase, which is eccentrics. So that is essentially negatives. So picture doing a heel raise and you're just coming down really slowly. A lot of people do a 2 up, 1 down approach where you go up with both heels and then lower slowly with just the injured leg. Those are eccentrics. And then you get into concentrics. After that, that's your classic working out. And then once things are feeling good and back to normal, then you can add in some explosive training, dynamic training. All right, what about stretching? I don't love stretching a tendon that's injured. You can if you keep it gentle, but if you picture let's take a tendinosis for example. If you got some fraying, you don't really want to tug on that too much. Again, it's probably pretty safe to do it gently, but also it doesn't do a whole lot. I'm much rather do active range of motion so you don't lose any range of motion. But in this early phase at least, you don't want to be tugging on something that's trying to repair. How about massage? I'm definitely a fan of massage, scraping, cupping. The cupping, I like the kind you slide around, not the kind that leave a bruise. I'm never trying to leave a bruise. I think that's counterproductive. The tendon has become sensitive, so when you massage it with a massage gun or your hands or whatever, you're going to desensitize it temporarily, which will give you an opportunity to work on that and move a little better. So massage is a yes. Plus, it's going to help get some fluids to the area. Usually you'll see it turn a little red. That's blood to the area. You're going to improve those sliding surfaces, the fascia, which is sort of the wrapping of the muscle. Sometimes it gets adhered down. You want to make sure you maintain mobility of those sliding surfaces. So massage might be able to help with some of these things. And then finally, the RICE protocol, the rest, ice, compression, elevation. That was written by Dr. Merkin, and he has since retracted that statement saying that we should not be doing that. I am not a fan of resting. I mean, you can recover and resting are different topics, but just doing nothing solves nothing. So rest is a no-no. Ice. All right, this is the big one. So I did a podcast with Gary Reinl, he's the inventor of the Mark Pro, and I did a whole podcast talking about exactly this topic. He's written a book on it. You should go back and listen to that if you haven't heard it yet. It's a great podcast. And if you think about what icing is, it's vasoconstriction. So why would we want to stop flow? Constriction is the narrowing of the vessels. If you do that, then you stop the ability of fluids to get to the area. You want that blood and the white blood cells to get there to help repair it. It's kind of like putting a blockade on a highway so the ambulance can't get there. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Now, it turns out the effect is pretty mild, the vasoconstriction. So I don't think it's like horribly damaging to ice and injury. It definitely doesn't decrease swelling like we thought. So I tell people, if it makes you feel good, it's probably okay. I wouldn't go crazy icing it like 10 times a day. I think it starts to get counterproductive at a certain point, but it's definitely not the anti-inflammatory that we thought. And at the same time, we don't want an anti-inflammatory. We want inflammation there, at least in the initial stages. I personally never ice an injury. I did see a study with Achilles, actually. It was kind of a small study, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But there was two groups. One group did... this was a Achilles tendon repair. So they had surgery, and the first group did just exercise, and the second group did ice and exercise. And what they found is the group that iced, they felt better sooner. No surprise, because you're basically desensitizing the nerve endings. But in the long term, they had higher re-tear rates and poor strength outcomes, which kind of makes sense. If you're icing it like crazy, maybe you're blocking some of those inflammatory cytokines, and I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think you're just going to heal back a little bit weaker. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are meant to do. What does this mean? It means exposing yourself to difficult situations so you become resilient. If you need help building resilience, check out our flagship program called Physiologic Flexibility. This is a 3-month do-it-yourself program that teaches you how to maximize your homeostatic regulators, such as your pH, blood glucose, O2 and CO2 tolerance, and temperature. We give you specific action items through the program with the goal of becoming anti-fragile. If you want to become the inspiration for your friends and family, this is the program for you.